Hi YouTube, this is Sean Connors and this is Outsiders. Welcome back. As promised in the first show that I did, in my first review on 3.5, today I'm going to be looking at one particular class, and that's going to be the fighters in 3.5 D&D. I'm going to spend just a few moments talking about what separates them, some of the tips and tricks that you can pull out for your fighters, and generally how you can build them going forward. So let me try and get into the meat of it. I'm talking primarily here for this discussion just straight fighters, and I will welcome your feedback. Fighters throughout all the levels, from first all the way up to epic, without a shadow of a doubt, work well. Doesn't matter what level they're in, they're needed. Every group needs at least one. The bigger the group, you may need two or more. They are the shield for the rest of the group. You know, by their very definition and name, they're the front line, they get stuck in. There's quite a few tricks to playing a fighter that one needs to be. I've always said this, a fighter well played has to do one thing well, and that is quantify the battlefield around him. He's got to be aware of what's going on at any given round and know appropriately the best course of action to take. In this version of the game, one 5-foot step in the wrong place can be absolutely lethal, not just for the fighter but for the people around him. So you absolutely have to know that. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail now from a DMing point of view, what sort of things you have to be mindful of. So at the lower levels, up to about level 7, generally it's positioning. So where are you in the group? Can you control the space? The tighter the space, the better it is really for a fighter, because if you're in a 5-foot gap, it means if you're at the front, you can control what's coming towards you generally. If you've got two fighters and they're backing each other up, that can be quite useful, particularly if one of the fighters, the one behind, has some sort of reach weapon. So in normal circumstances it wouldn't be possible to get an attack into the same square. It may be, the referee may apply a penalty, however it's worth doing. So you can see at the lower levels, without a doubt, they have several advantages. Generally most fighters, straight fighters, will have a good armour class, high hit points and good abilities to hit. Their weakness throughout all the levels, without a shadow of doubt, is will saves, and it becomes more applicable at high level. So everything that you can do to mask your weakness and improve on it is going to be very powerful later on in the game. It's very easy just to go after certain feats and forget the basics. And if you've any doubt of that, play a fighter at high level and see what happens once you start running into some of the major enemy there. You will fall over because you've got nothing. It's one save or pretty much you're taken out of the fight. Not that you're killed, but often you're separated from the rest of the group, and then you're relying on others in the group to bail you out. I always think it's better for a fighter to be in a position to do that for himself, so be mindful of that. Another thing that fighters have access to is lots of feats, particularly martial feats, so use them well and use them wisely. Always look at what you're trying to do. It is no good, I've heard many discussions about this, and as DM I will try to cover a couple of bits off. You sometimes hear of things like where you hear of people that talk on various programs and review sites who talk about I've got a bow specialist fighter, or I've got a tripping style fighter using a flail, or something along those lines. They're fantastic, they're impossible to stop, sort of thing. Well, those specialists are actually only any good if you've got fighters in front of them, to be honest. You've got to have somebody else protecting that bow specialist, because if anybody can get to him, he's a chocolate teapot. Because, as I say, always press. If the enemy know that you're good, they'll try to press you, they'll get into you as quickly as possible. If you've got a reach weapon, that seems fantastic at low levels, and generally they are quite potent. However, as you go up in the levels and you start meeting creatures that equally have reach, and that can just step a few feet, 5 feet in and then still hit you, your flail, your reach attacks become superfluous, and some of these people have ability to teleport in at will as you reach those tricky levels. We were talking about this the other time, 8th to 14th level, so you have to be absolutely mindful of that. So all round, my best piece of advice to you from both a tactical point of view and a refereeing point of view is to have a fighter that doesn't have all his eggs in one basket fighting wise. Always have one big weapon that you like to use that's going to dish out high damage, but equally be aware of your situation. Quantify the battlefield, have a reach weapon, maybe have a missile weapon, develop your feat trees to account for that, and focus on your weakness. And what you'll find is there's two other things that really bode well for the fighter. Generally, in most groups that work well together, the fighter does very well out of it, because most of the time any stuff that could be his, the players just give it automatically, and equally no one wants to see the fighter not have enough money to spend, so they generally seem to do quite well. Also, don't be afraid as a fighter to shout for healing. Don't be afraid to badger or beg the magician for the type of spells that are going to benefit you, and particularly at lower levels and even at higher levels. Things like enlarge and various things like that can be very useful. And look out for particular magic items that can really give your character an edge. And again, try to have some sort of backup in case things go wrong as you reach those higher levels. So this has been an episode of Outsiders. My name's Sean Connors. I hope you found the Fighters tips useful to you for those playing 3.5. And look out for the next episode where we will focus on Wizards. Thank you for your time, good day and happy gaming.